Hello everyone, welcoming you to Saurabh's classes. And today we are looking at the Azim Premji University M Economics Entrance Paper 2021, question number 17. Consider a closed economy with positive government expenditure and zero taxes. The output is constrained by aggregate expenditure. That means we are basically looking at a Keynesian kind of a setup. Aggregate savings is a product of the propensity to consume into the output, and it is less than 1. The government expenditure and the interest rates are exogenously given. Investment decisions are formed on the basis of expectations as argued by Keynes, and it responds negatively to changes in the interest rate. Which of the following statements is wrong? Okay, so let us check all of them one by one. So if the government expenditure rises by 1 rupee, aggregate savings increases by 1 rupee. So what happens in the Keynesian framework, that y is equals to your, okay, let me just start from the very beginning. The savings function has been given to be small s times y, where s lies between 0 and 1. So consumption is y minus s, so that will become 1 minus small s times capital Y. And therefore what we have, therefore now y is equals to c plus I plus g, correct? So y is equals to 1 minus s into y plus I plus g. So taking the y terms to the right, so this will be I plus g. Now we have an increase in government expenditure. So s times dy is equals to dg. So dy by dg is equals to 1 upon s, right? And it is specifically given for option A. I'm talking about, this is evaluating option A, that if the government expenditure increases by 1 rupee, that means as dg is equals to 1, so we basically have dy as equals to 1 upon s. So now what is the aggregate savings? It is small s times capital Y. So change in aggregate savings, that is capital DS, is equals to small s times dy, which is s into 1 by s, which is equals to 1, right? So this is correct option, that if the government expenditure increases by 1 rupees, aggregate savings also increases by 1 rupees. Now comes the second option. If the aggregate propensity rises, if the savings propensity rises, then the aggregate savings will also rise. Now this, if you remember, was known as the paradox of thrift. Follows from something. I'll just explain in a moment what I mean. Okay, so let me evaluate point B. Your propensity to save increases, right? You want to save more. That means given an output level for a given income or given Y, your aggregate savings will increase. If your aggregate savings will increase, your consumption will fall. If your consumption is falling, then the aggregate demand will fall. Given we have a Keynesian kind of a setup, so let me just write down, given a Keynesian setup, if your aggregate demand is falling, then your output will also fall. And if your output falls, then obviously your chunk of income is falling, then naturally your consumption will fall and your aggregate savings will fall. So if you look at the conclusion, we begin with the assumption that if you try to save more, right, the marginal propensity to save increases, but you end up saving less, aggregate savings falls. So your conclusion is basically yours, an increase in small s will lead to a fall in capital S. This is what we call as the paradox of thrift. So if you go back to the options, part B says that if savings propensity rises, aggregate savings also rises, which is wrong. It should fall. So the correct option is option number B. This is the wrong statement that has been given for the set of options. So your final answer is option number B. Hello everyone, welcoming you to Shorup's classes. So continuing with question number 18 of the Azim Premji University, question number 18. So consider an open economy where output is constrained by balance of payment. The net capital inflow is zero. So that means balance of trade is same as balance of payment in this case. Because if you remember, what is BOP usually? By definition, it is the balance of trade plus net capital inflow. Since delta K is equals to 0, we have balance of trade same as balance of payment in this case. Real exchange rate is fixed. Trade is balanced in every period. This is another important observation. What does it mean? Balance of trade is equals to 0 for all t. The level of import at any given period is equals to the product of import propensity of output and the level of output. The import propensity is fixed at 0.25 for a given period. If the growth rate of export is 5%, then the growth rate of output for the period will be what amount? So let me just write down two things. First, the first important information that has been given is balance of trade is equals to 0 for all periods, right? Now, what is the definition of balance of period? Volume of export minus volume of import is equals to 0. That means the value of exports is equals to value of imports. And what is the definition of imports over here? Small m times y. Fine. And note one thing over here that since we are talking in terms of in a literally dynamic sense, so apart from the standard variables that x and m are functions of, it is also a function of t, and m is also a function of t, and so is GDP is also a function of t. Okay, so here we have two informations that is given. The import propensity is fixed to be 0.25, so this is 0.25, and the growth rate of export is 5%. So what is the growth rate of export? That is dx dt divided by x, right? This is the growth rate of export. That is 5%, which is 0.05, right? We need to evaluate the growth rate of output. So let's understand this, how we are going to do that. So x is equals to m times y, right? This is the same for all t. So this is the condition that we'll use. So if we differentiate with respect to t, dx by dt is equals to m times dy by dt, right? So in order to find the growth rate, what I'll do, I'll multiply with y on both sides. So essentially the term that I have on the right, dy by dt into 1 by y, will basically represent the growth rate of GDP. And to make the further adjustment, what I'll do to have the growth rate of export as well, I'll multiply this by x over here and divide by x. So that makes it m times dy by dt into 1 upon y. So what do we have? X by y into 1 upon x dx by dt is equals to m times dy by dt into 1 upon y. Now look at from the initial condition, x is equals to m times y. What is x by y? It is the marginal propensity to import. So this is also m, right? M times 1 by x dx by dt is equals to m times dy by dt times 1 upon y. So m and m will get cancelled out. So 1 by x dx by dt is equals to 1 by y dy by dt. So the growth rate of exports, which is the term on the left, is same as the growth rate of the output or GDP. So that means this is also nothing but 5%. So coming back to the options, it is option number B according to the set of answers that we have. Okay. So now moving forward with question number 19 of the Azim Premji University M Economics 2021 paper. The growth rate of labor productivity of an economy is 3%, whereas the growth rate of labor supply is 1%. What would be the steady state growth rate of output in the solar model, right? So per capita output in this case is defined as what? Small y is equals to capital Y by A times L, right? Capital Y is the aggregate output, A is the technology level, L is the labor supply. So if we take log and do time derivatives, so it is capital Y small y dot by y is equals to capital Y dot by y minus A dot by A minus L dot by L. So at steady state, per capita capital stock stops growing. So small y dot is equals to 0. That means the left hand side is 0. So y capital Y dot by y minus A dot by A minus L dot by L is equals to 0. This means y dot by y is equals to A dot by A plus L dot by L. And L dot by L is the growth rate of labor, which is N. And A dot by A is G. That is G plus N. Now, if you look at the question, the labor productivity, so this is the technology basically. So G is given to be 3%, whereas the growth rate of labor, that is N, is given to be 1%. So y dot by y will be 3 plus 1, which is nothing but 4%. So option C is your answer to question number 19. So now moving on to question number 20 of the Azim Premji University M Economics paper 2021. Suppose there are two countries, the gold land and credit money land. The output in both the countries is equal in the initial period. In both the economies, the IS schedule is negatively sloped. The money supply is fixed in gold land and interest rate is determined by money demand at a given money supply. In credit money land, the interest rate is fixed. The interest rate is fixed by the central bank and the money supply is determined by money demand. Now the government expenditures increase by 1 unit in both the countries. The output rises to YC and YG in gold land and credit money land respectively. If everything else is similar between the two countries, which of the two is correct? Okay. So let me just go through the important information once more. The IS curve is negatively sloped in both the countries. That means the consumption and investment behaviors are the same. The money supply is fixed in gold land. Okay. So gold land basically follows money supply targeting. Okay. It determines the money's level of money supply that is to be maintained. Whereas credit money land goes in for interest rate targeting. Okay. So what does it mean? So let's say that the money demand schedule is the same. L, Y, comma R for both countries. That means if I just denote it, the money demand country for gold land is same as the money demand schedule for credit, which is L of Y, comma R, where Ly is positive, Lr is negative. Okay. So there are two important things. For gold land, what will happen? Gold land follows a money supply targeting. That means it will or modify the level of money supply in the economy, and the interest rate will adjust automatically. If you just look at the graph that we can possibly draw, sorry, let me just redraw this. So over here we have the interest rate and the money demanded and money supplied. So money demand schedule is negatively sloped, and money supply, if I assume it's autonomous, then you have something like this. This is the determined money supply, MS bar, and this is the interest rate in the market, right? This is how it works. But on the other hand, for credit land, it's something else. So again, a similar figure, R and M, the money demand schedule will be negatively sloped. So that is your MD right over here. So over here, what happens is it goes for interest rate targeting. That means the central bank basically fixes the interest rate, something at R bar, and then this determines your money supply, right? So in this case, what will happen? Try to understand this. What is the definition of a LM curve? It is the locus of Y and R that maintains money market equilibrium, isn't it? So for gold land, if let's say your Y rises, then your demand for money will rise. If your demand for money will rise, the money demand schedule will move up. So consecutively, R will rise, right? So we have a usual positively sloped LM curve. Positively sloped LM curve. All right. But over here, so this is for credit land, and this is for sorry, the opposite one. The first one is for gold land, and the second one is for credit land. If your Y rises, then your money demand schedule will rise, but R is unchanged, right? Because this will move to the right, but R will remain, money supply will increase, so R is unchanged. So LM is horizontal. So this is a fundamental difference between these two countries, which we get from the simple idea of interest rate targeting versus money supply targeting. So now the question is that we need to answer is that now the government expenditure increases by 1 unit in both the countries. The rise is to YG and YC, and in gold land and credit money land respectively. If everything else is held constant, which of the ones is correct? So let me just draw the ISLM diagram once more. The first one for gold land and the second one for credit money land. So Y on the horizontal axis, R on the vertical axis, over here R and over here Y, right? So the IS curve is the same in both. initial IS curve. So this is my IS1, which is same. For gold land, we have a positively sloped LM. So this is your LM. But for credit money land, we have a flat LM, horizontal LM. Interest rate fixed at R bar. So this is your LM. So this is your initial equilibrium E1 and output is at Y1. And since everything is the same, so this is the initial equilibrium E1 and our output here is also Y1. Now we have a similar expenditure increase by the government. So what will happen? The IS curve will shift to the right in both the cases. And note that the shift will be the same because IS2 corresponds to DG equals to 1 increase. And over here also, the IS curve will move rightwards by the same amount. So IS2 DG equals to 1. Okay, so the new equilibrium rises to E2. This is YG and this is YC. Now, if you understand, this YG is actually lesser than YC because just if I just can draw another comparative figure, let's say the initial output is same in both cases. So this is the case, right? If I just club both the diagrams together, this is the parametrically set R bar and this is the LM for credit money land. This is the LM for gold mine. So the initial equilibrium is same. It's same increase in government expenditure. With gold land, we have an increase till YG, but with credit money land, we have an increase till YC. So YC is greater than YG. That's your answer. YC is greater than YG. So that is your option number B in the options. Thank you.